Okay, we're good to go here. Let me just share once again. Okay, are you seeing it?
I
Yep.
am.
Okay.
Is there any way that we can make that first page a little less busy? Because you've got you've got the website and the the charter.
Well,
Let me hold on. Let me close a few screens here.
I think in general, Lillian, I think it was a suggestion that Neil made to move some of the stuff that was cluttering up the body and just put it on the cover. And I liked the idea because it puts kind of everything right up front that's contextual. And I don't mind how busy the page is, but we could certainly put it back if that's the consensus of the group.
Well, let's see how many pages we have, because if we have a blank back page, we could probably take some of this and put it on page 2. But anyway, it just looks like there's too much stuff on there.
Well, it's definitely busier than past years. It was basically the gray box and our names.
Yeah.
But the content, I think, is
No,
identical.
I think it's perfect. I'm just saying it's got a lot of stuff in there.
And I think, Mark, the reason I have those things in yellow is I think that's just a cut and paste of last year's link. So I'm guessing they have to be updated, or maybe they don't. Like, do the 22s have to become something new?
Yes, they do, Chuck. But the open budget website is accurate.
Okay, then we can unyellow that.
And this will change once we get it up on the website, which we're going to try to do by the end of this week. Okay, but I want to notify the town councilors before we do that.
Got it. Okay. And we'll keep Lillian's comment about how busy it is, in our hip pockets, and see how we end up at the end of this document, kind of spacing wise.
Okay.
And on the next page, I should add, I only put the yellow on page because the page numbers will depend on how the spacing works ultimately. So
Right. I think this is a wonderful addition. It helps whoever reads it to have a good reference to wherever they need to go.
well, you can thank Neil for the idea. It's a good idea.
Thank you, Neil.
It's long.
Well, that's because the school report is.
I absolutely only use the number of pages as school is a percentage of the budget.
Okay.
So the methodology and overview are largely unchanged from our last thing. I left purple just to note that things were updated, but I'll change those to black, obviously.
Yeah. I think it's really good. Toward the last paragraph says 3 million, 3 mm. And I think what we need to do is to have consistency. We're either going to use million or we're all going to use mm throughout. But because in that other paragraph that starts challenges presented, the 5th line down says 10 mm as well. So I think we just need to decide among ourselves whether we're going to use mm or whether we're going to use the word million.
So
just to be consistent.
Yep, understand. Do we use the word million somewhere? Because I tried to get rid of all those. I figured people would use the full numbers when they felt it was appropriate, but where we were either had a nice round number or a simple decimal point, that we just use for no other reason than it just takes up less space.
Okay, that sounds good to me, as long as we are consistent.
Yeah, and I'll make a note to kind of
Okay.
recheck to make sure we're consistent.
Yeah. But it looks good.
All right. So on the revenue side, I wanted to check with Mark to make sure 32% is,
Where are you?
we're on the third, the one in yellow, the third paragraph.
Are we only taxing at 32% of our taxing capacity?
Yeah, Chuck, what I'll do is go through this report and verify all of those numbers.
Okay.
This is actually down to, I think, around 26% because of our increase in townwide valuation.
Got it.
So I'll go through all of these numbers and verify their accuracy
Okay.
once we have a final draft.
Okay. And then I highlighted the two numbers under projected revenue because I don't think those are the same numbers we show later on in the tables. And obviously they need to be the same, I think, unless I'm misreading something. So if that's part of that process, Mark, that's fine. Or if that's something we'd like to do here, that's fine.
We can make it part of that process when I go through this and verify the accuracy of the numbers to make sure that they agree with the budget that we issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Because-
think, sorry, I
The
think
the
Chuck,
enterprise fund revenues that I have are slightly different from the ones that you have in yellow.
Correct.
Yeah, that's why I'll go through these and verify.
Okay.
yeah, I think we have to go through it, as Mark said, because the numbers he sent out today are a tweak different than were sent out in March.
Yes, they are.
And so everything here is from March.
Right.
All right. So we'll focus in this session then, thankfully, mostly on verbiage and message and not about the fifth decimal point.
Okay.
So
So we can
Mark?
move on to general fund.
general fund,
Yep. Again, you're tweaking of the number of on 24.
right. And I think what I will let Neil or Jackie, if she's on the line, comment, but what they did was, I think they took a chart or a table that had been in Neil's section and moved it into the general fund section. And so this is a transplanted table, but the numbers, I think, work, and I think the tables are good as part of the general fund section.
Yeah, I'm sorry, can we go back a little bit to the revenue section, second to last paragraph?
Revenues, yep.
In the second to last paragraph, it says at the end of the sentence, sewer enterprise fund. That label nowhere else appears in the numbers.
Yeah, it's really the water pollution control
Yes,
enterprise fund.
correct.
All right. I will make that change.
Yeah, I did see that also.
Okay, water pollution.
Then, yeah, Jackie and I did work on the, and she asked if I'd participate in the lead here on the general fund section, which we tried to focus on how much it is, which will have to change a little bit for fiscal year 2024, because the numbers that are in the final budget that Mark sent out are a little bit less.
Right.
But beyond that, it basically goes through how much is, the trend over the last 5 years and what has been the drivers of that change. It then goes through where the sources are, which again will have to change a little bit based upon what Mark's final budget numbers are.
Right.
And then it explains where did this increase of $13 million go to relative to the department budgets and other expenses that will be described in detail in each of the department budgets. I think the areas where, and I think Chuck made the change on this page where it says allocation of general fund growth, which I think is a good one from what was there before. If we go back a little bit, what I think I kind of fudged because I wasn't quite sure. The first paragraph on the page that's being shown, I'm not sure that's 100% correct, and I would ask Mark to check that. It's clearly the fiscal 2024 tax revenues went up more than the 2.5% plus normal growth by, I think it was Vineyard Wind and the Kmart Plaza, as you described last time, but I'm not quite sure if I got that right.
Yeah, I will provide Chuck some modified language here to make it accurate.
Yeah.
Thank you. Beyond that, I think the changes we made before and the percentages under expenditures have been captured. And I think the rest of it's pretty much leads into the rest of it. It doesn't, and I think the next piece not being shown yet is from the prior version, which talked about the reserves that are being applied and the so-called summary section.
Yeah, those are from last year.
Correct. And if people think it's fine without the yellow highlighted, I will just erase it. All I wanted to do, I think I did this with this section and with one of Chris's sections, is just make sure that comments that were made last year aren't necessary again this year.
I think that summary looks okay. It essentially is our point of view. Anybody else?
Yeah, it's not controversial. It was just, I always, yeah.
Yeah.
I just kind of always saw it as a mainstay of what we did as we close out this section. So I will unhighlight it and leave it in the summary. Now, how about the paragraph on?
Can you go back up to the top where it says property tax?
Okay.
At the very top. I'm not sure property tax needs to be capitalized.
Whoops, yeah, back down, Mark, sorry.
No. At the
Right
very,
there.
here, yeah. I'm not sure property tax needs to be capitalized.
Yep. Correct.
Yeah, it's generic.
Yep, I will fix that.
I'm wondering whether we should use the new name for the Kmart Plaza. There's a developer and it has a new name.
I think it's the landing in Hyannis, but I'll double check that.
Yeah.
Okay. Mark, I will, since you're going to be kind enough to go through this and look at the numbers, after the meeting, I will send you what I'll call version 5.0 so that you have the changes we've made here tonight as you go through it again.
Great, thank you.
Now on the expenditures line 2, it says that fixed costs are 33% of the total general fund. And of course, that's going to mine. When I did mine, it was 34%, but new figures were sent out today, so we'll have to adjust that one.
Yep.
Yeah.
I assume, Mark, that basically anything that has a number in it that's a variable number or a number subject to change is something you'll just make sure we have right.
Yes,
Okay.
that's what I plan on doing. I'll go through your version 5 and do that kind of check against everything. All
Cool.
numbers and percentages.
Thank you. On the second paragraph of expenditures, if you're going to go school department, then maybe the D needs to be capitalized.
Yep. Okay,
And then maybe municipal doesn't need to be capitalized. And same would be true of fixed cost pensions, debt service, and school assessment. This is the Capitol Police at work here.
all righty,
Okay.
okay.
Do we want to say where the general fund growth will be used? Will be used.
Understand. Now that's one of those, so this is one of those formatting things where I don't have access to on my machine, the table's embedded.
Okay,
So I agree with your comment, Lillian, but I can't make the change.
okay.
So
But we
you-
will.
Who can make, Neil, can you make that change?
I can make that change. I just need that. So instead of allocation of general fund growth, would like that to say where the general fund growth will be used?
Yes,
Okay.
Wait a minute. I'm
Not
sorry.
the title, Neil, inside the
Yeah,
table.
no, it's in the box, Neil. I can change outside. It's where general fund growth used. And I think Lillian is saying it should be where general fund growth will be used
will be
Will be.
used.
Okay.
in the header to the inside the table.
Right.
Got it.
Okay. I think this is a really good, good information.
Yep.
It's
Yep,
very
I agree.
clear.
I agree. All right, keep going, Mark. And then the yellow paragraph in red there. I don't know if I got an opinion about whether that should stay in here this year. I think it's mentioned somewhere else in the report anyway.
Well, those of you who worked on the general fund, what do you think?
It is mentioned again later in the document. So so I'm not sure. Actually, it was mentioned. Where is it mentioned? I think it's optional. We do repeat ourselves a couple times in this document anyways.
Do you think that it's more appropriate because this is general fund section to say that $250,000 will be used to balance it out?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
Okay,
well, let's just leave it there then.
okay. And if we find it in the other place, we'll make sure it's not redundant and unnecessary.
Yeah,
All right, I've got that done.
and then the summary looks okay too.
Okay,
Okay,
and then we can go to the mothership.
here's the mothership, yes.
Geez.
60% of our report.
It's only a third. Take the $220 million divided by 8, and divide it into 80, and you get a third. Anyways, the school department is not a lot changed from last time. What we did was he incorporated the changes that were recommended, so that I would be very open to people catching typos, wordos, and making corrections, because I'm sure I missed some, and indeed I've already seen some myself. But in the summary, it's basically exact. The first paragraph is as it was. The second paragraph has been added based upon the group's recommendation to bring up the issue early of the general fund becoming so large a piece of the general fund, and making the recommendation that either a new or an additional reserve might be considered should the event that isn't projected anytime soon, but you never know that state aid might get cut. You know, I keep seeing all this stuff about the debt ceiling, and I keep wondering how that's going to resolve. So none of us know, but so that's what was changed here, and I think is a topic of discussion. Is that appropriate or not, and is it worded correctly?
I think the content is excellent.
Yep.
My
agreed.
only suggestion here, Neil, would be that wouldn't impact the schools if we were to receive a substantial reduction. It would impact the town.
Ah,
Chapter 78 comes to the town. It doesn't go directly to the schools.
right.
So it becomes a
I
town issue.
understand that, but for instance, the thing that I would, you know, that when you dig into the numbers, the reason that more than half of the $6 million accrued to the increase this year for the town was because they pushed Barnstable out of the majority of the towns in terms of its wealth and income, so that we got a bigger percentage of aid versus town contribution. If that were to reverse next year, because, you know, we'd lose $3.8 million again. And the issue to the school is it wouldn't, unless the ratios of the 62.5 versus 40 or whatever allocations don't change, the staff we're adding this year won't be affordable next year, was what I was worried about.
Yeah, it would impact more than just the school department though, because
Yeah,
we don't
I
cut
understand.
the school department directly by any reduction in chapter 78. It's shared amongst all departments.
Exactly. I understand that. And so should this kind of issue be taken out of the school and put somewhere else? Do you think?
I think so, because it's really like it would impact the town as a whole and not just the
Yeah.
school.
That's a good
So
point.
maybe put it back up put it somewhere in the revenue section where we talk about increase in chapter 78 and how, you know, the town is now sees 15% of its general fund operating budget paid for with state aid, and therefore any across the board percentage cuts in the future would impact the overall town's general fund operating budget more significantly now, because we rely more upon state aid than we used to.
Can you do that, Chuck?
Yep, I made a note and I will
Okay.
do my
Okay.
darndest. Yep.
Okay. The other thing was a mistake on my part in the second paragraph. Should that it'll get rewritten, but it has the same clause twice in the second paragraph in the second sentence. So if you take the
Yeah, right.
More than double, more than twice. Yep.
yeah.
Right.
Okay, I will take care of that.
Okay, so going on to the details have changed only very slightly. Nothing significant unless people saw something. Talks about, you know, the details of the 82.8, which I think is not changed in the latest budget numbers, the 6 million, et cetera, et cetera. Nothing's changed in terms of the second bullet relative to the English language workers or English language learners, excuse me, and economically disadvantaged students. So we can probably go to page 8. I think this shows this is going to be a long-term issue. There might be a formatting issue, which is, again, this chart is actually a picture. So if it gets pulled down a little bit, Chuck, I think the text, which is actually the title of this, will go back into its normal middle of the page format.
Where did you put the title?
Yeah.
Okay, I've got it.
Okay.
Yep. we're good.
There you
Yeah,
go.
I
Yeah,
have a real hard time getting a lot of these tables to transfer from Excel into Word and keep their format.
Yep.
I don't know how, if anybody has any suggestions on how to do that, I'm willing to learn.
No,
Again.
I sit here with my cursor and just, tappy tap it until I get it to do it without screwing something else up. So,
Yeah, I think whatever Mark did, that fixed it. Thank you.
yep.
Going on, it continues with the stuff that we all accepted last time, including where the growth came from in that table.
right. That's good.
Yep.
Yep.
And then, the more details about Chapter 70, which is one of the things that Mark had told us in March, he thought we should try to explain and is in this section, which starts with the fact that Chapter 70 is actually based upon the total education expenses that the town is expected to carry, and then how that drives things. So these numbers that the state-defined educative spending actual FY 2022 and estimated 2023, 2024, I've had Mark take a look at, and they are estimates for 2023 and 24. And I think, Mark, you said, even though they're estimates, they look reasonably directionally correct. So it's not going to mislead the town council or the town manager. And I think it makes an important point about, what the town is investing in its children is a lot more than just a direct school budget, which we need to take into account. It's really impressive, how much is being spent on 5,000 students, as was spent on me, I guess, in a way, in reduced inflation dollars way back when. So I think this is an important thing for, I think, the town council to be informed on. And it also, of course, is what's driving Chapter 78.
Right.
Any comments or suggestions?
No, I think putting in the total cost is a good one. It's not just the Chapter 70, and it's not just our what we put in, but all those other things.
Yep, I agree.
Okay.
So if we go on to page 10, I think that now gets into the growth rates of the school operating budget and Chapter 78 aid, with the good news of Chapter 78 actually is growing a little bit faster than the school budgets. And obviously in the last 2 years, as the Student Opportunity Act has really gone into effect, it's made a huge difference in the growth rate.
Yeah.
Which me being, more of the half empty versus half full persuasion makes me worry about, should that go away, which is why I think the Chapter 78 issue is to the Scoun's general fund is a non-trivial issue, because those discontinuities have a pervasive impact.
Right.
We then go into, at the bottom of that page, that what we're seeing is explaining the Student Activity or Student Opportunity Act made changes to Chapter 70, which has been around since for 30 years. But that's the thing that made the big difference in terms of low-income English language learners and special education funding, which is about on a average student Chapter 70 fund. Those three things actually raise the dollars per student by 50% on average.
Yep.
Which we'll get into on beyond. Is that make sense?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Then we have to go to student enrollment, and the real issue here is not the total enrollment, which is only 1 or 2%, but it's the English language learners is the big change. So we go through that and we show that in that exact table that the economically disadvantaged has actually flattened. And going from 55 to 54% in the last 2 years is not statistically significant, but going from 16 to 21, or a 35% increase in English language learners, is significant. Makes a big difference. It brings that population up to more than 1,000 students now.
Yep.
And it's what's interesting is 2/3 of them, it's not here, but what I found interesting is that 2/3 of them are actually Portuguese speakers, and Spanish speakers are only a little less than 1/3. And then there are some Ukrainian speakers. I mean, it's amazing to me how diverse the population of students is, that the schools have to find people, teachers who can translate and teach in those languages. So then the next piece goes into, how does that impact the budget? And, part of it is the skills, and part of it is the money that Chapter 70 then allocates. And if you calculate, as at the very top sentence in that page shows, the town gets about $10,000 per student to start. But then you increase that for those 3 categories, and you can see the amounts of the foundation budget they get, of which almost 1/3 of that actually goes into additional Chapter 70 aid that comes to Barnstable. And I think that's a valuable kind of set of metrics for the town council to at least know about, even if they cannot, extrapolate those to how does that all go to the budget.
Under the 2 points to note paragraph, the last sentence, I guess I'm asking Mark, maybe, is contributed the right word, Mark? Is that the word you would use? Or funded, or something else?
Yeah, maybe funded. Either one works.
Either one. Okay, then I'll just leave it alone. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay, so the next section goes into the additions to a cost, primarily school staffing, lays out the details of that as the school has presented, kind of bucketed a little bit differently than they do. They spent many pages doing it, and we tried to consolidate that.
Mhm.
All right.
Any comments or suggestions or corrections on this section so far?
Nope. And I, just for the record, I will go through the document from top to bottom before I send Mark the next version for him to look at. So if there is anything, I'll try to catch like the millions versus millions and grammar and capitals and all that stuff. But if there is anything substantive, I'll make sure it's noted, so I don't just make changes with which you might not agree. But I'll do this kind of from top to bottom before I send the next version to Mark.
Just so that I understand, you're going to go through this and get rid of all the capital letters that don't need to be capitalized.
I am. I'm
And
going to do my darndest, Lillian. Yes.
And you're going to squeeze in there's some numbers there are numbers, and then there's a space, and there's an MM, and then there are others that have no space. So you're going to take care of that too.
Lillian and I live for that stuff. So yes.
Okay. I know you've got eagle eyes, so I just want to be sure.
I will do that. Yep.
Okay.
So down to cost efficiencies and thinking beyond.
Yeah, obviously, one of the things that we probably need to do more of is figure out ways to save expenses. And there were some, and I thought it was notable to give the schools credit for that. I mean, they spent months working on this budget, trying to find places to save money, and also grants, I think, is an important issue. Which is something actually I'm really interested in learning more about. The funding of the town from all the diversity of sources is really amazingly complex. And I look forward to learning more about that. But thinking beyond was, okay, so what's the future and what are the things that we need to cope with? I think the superintendent engaging a consultant to understand a forecast of the demographics to help fund the enrollment, the skills that the school will need, and the space requirements. I suggest that CFAC should applaud that planning to get ahead of the issues. It'll also be useful, I think, to the finance group to have some input to help try to figure out what state aid is coming down the part. It's as much as it really looks amazingly difficult to forecast. Every little bit of information can help. And then kind of the obligatory operating budgets will face challenges. I tried to improve that from last time and bucket them into areas with recommendations, which I would ask the group to think about and comment on, because these were my thoughts. They're not that I think CFAC really needs to weigh in on. So inflation is obviously going to show up in every department. And I think that the issue there is for finding more cost efficiencies, winning more grants, and then working with the town to identify and create more revenue sources to help offset inflation. I mean, at the end of the day, the whole thing really seems to be, we need more money.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts in how to deal with inflation that CFAC may want to talk about or change here?
Well, if it's okay with you, some or all of us will look at these and see if we want to amend them in any way. And then we will send our thoughts to Chuck, and then we can look at it at our next meeting, if that's okay.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Sounds good.
One
Thank you
point of
very much.
clarification.
This is really a tremendous amount of research. This is the most comprehensive report we have ever made on schools. Thank you.
Well, I think a lot of the credit goes to Mark and all the help he gave me, as well as the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, and Chris Dwelly, who is in charge of finance with the school. If
Well,
they hadn't put up with all my crazy questions, I wouldn't know all this.
Just have one point of clarification in this section, Neil.
Yes.
There's a reference here a few times about demographic forecasts. What the school department's actually conducting are enrollment forecasts. They're not having a consultant conduct demographic forecasts, but enrollment forecasts.
Ah,
Those
I
are
got
very
that
different.
wrong.
Yeah. So I
Okay.
would just change demographic forecast to enrollment forecast, where you say.
Do you know if the enrollment forecast will cover things like the expectation for English language learners and such, or no?
I don't think it's going to get to that level of detail. I don't even know how you would do that, honestly.
I think there are actually amazingly good analogies of how the changes in a town's immigrants, I'll say it the way I know it. The more immigrants that go to a region from a country, the faster it grows for many years. So, from what I know, which is very little, if the Portuguese-speaking population from Brazil especially has been growing so fast, it will continue to do so for several years. But
what I would do then, what I would suggest is I think we should have the school department review this section
yes,
to make sure that, what they're actually doing is consistent or accurate with what you're saying here.
I would totally agree.
Okay.
Lillian said that, you would be the guide on that. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
So that's kind of the way this concludes. Any other comments or recommendations?
Just had a general comment on formatting, and Neil, you went way in depth with this stuff, but you have citations on these pages. It's the only section in the report that has those citations. So I don't know, for consistency, if we want to keep citations in one section or add citations to other sections. I don't know if that matters to anyone. Just since this is the only section that has those citations at the bottom of some of the pages,
Yeah, I am, you asked a question, so I'll give an opinion. I am not bothered by the fact that there's only one section with citations. For the same reason, I'm not bothered that some of the numbers in here are spelled out and others are just shortened with an MM. Sometimes contextually and or layout wise or flow wise, it makes sense. And I kind of defer to the writers to use or not use citations as they see necessary. So I don't have any inherent problem with them only being in one section.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have a problem with it. I was just raising it, since we had talked about consistency earlier.
I'm wondering whether all the tables and charts should look pretty uniform, because Neil's are slightly different from general fund, and then they're slightly different from police. So I wonder whether we need to look at that. I'm picking up on what Chris said, and in terms of consistency of format.
So,
I mean, it doesn't change the significance of the information. It's just that visually it looks different. And we just need to decide whether we're going to let it like that or whether we're going to make it more uniform.
I was okay, Lillian, one
Okay.
country heard from. I was okay with the tables differing from section to section, but there are a couple of cases where within a given section, the tables are formatted differently. And those I do think we should have some consistency to, but we haven't gotten to those yet.
Okay.
But I'm actually okay with the way this looks. I mean, I find content wise this report to be such a improvement over what I thought was a pretty good report last year, that if it has a new look, terrific.
Well, we all still have the lash marks that you hit us with.
Yep.
Okay, moving on.
Right, so DPW, I mean, the numbers, all of that's the same as when we discussed it last time. I added a little bit on there just to highlight that personnel was the largest portion of the budget, as it is with most of the departments, or all of them, I think. But, so I just added that to, the numbers, the second paragraph there, just to highlight that. And the table obviously is the same. mentioned the things about CWMP being separated and going into the Water Pollution Control Fund. And that CFAC has consistently supported revenue for those projects, similar to last year's report. The big change obviously is adding, after we discussed with the department what their challenges are. And personnel is the biggest thing, finding qualified people to fill positions. I took a look at the town website, and right now there are 25 job vacancies associated with DPW across their various divisions. And those are, quote unquote, less important things like custodians all the way up to engineers, managers. And the administrator made it clear that, that's a challenge for them, and that's really their biggest challenge right now. So I thought highlighting that was the most important part of our report on their budget. And, trying to find ways to address that. I know the administrator said they're trying to do what they can within the department as far as promoting people from within, offering internships, on-the-job training, but you're still limited to whoever's applying for these positions. And one of the problems with that is restrictions on the salary they can offer. So I thought it was appropriate to recommend that the town try to work with the department to address those things.
I think that's very clear.
Yes, I like the color commentary.
Yeah, it's concise, it's accurate. I have some, okay, there is at the very top, the first paragraph. There needs to be a comma after drinking water in the page, line 2. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, and then in the last 3 paragraphs, I throw this out. Let's see where you say CFAC advises, or is no,
On the next page,
on the next page, CFAC advises. I wonder whether we want to use the word recommends.
yeah, I had looked at previous reports, and usually it seemed like advises was the word that was used, but I'm certainly open to changing that.
I'm just throw that out.
Mark, do you feel any sensitivity one way or the other?
No, I don't.
All right.
Okay, and then in the last sentence, it says, we will review and comment. There you go, you added the ons. And then the last one in the last pair. In that second paragraph to the end, 4th line from the bottom, food waste throughout the town, comma, thereby reducing the total of solid waste. Do we
Yep,
want,
I see what you're saying. Yep. We need
yeah,
a link.
thereby reducing, we're doing all this stuff, thereby reducing the total of solid waste to dispose.
Yep. I see what you're, yep.
Sounds good.
Made.
And I mean, obviously I put things in there as the whole of CFAC, advises the town, applauds the department. If anyone has a problem with any of those, please speak up as far as what we're recommending.
No, I
Yeah.
think that's good.
Yep,
No.
agree.
Can I ask something, Lillian? This is Betty Ludke. After the last meeting, I was so concerned with what Director Santos had to say that I called him and we had a conversation. And I kind of told him straight out that I don't think he has enough money to do what he's charged to do. And I was wondering, do you guys then leave it up to the town? Because I'm going to approach Mark Ells with some ideas. Do you ever suggest things, or it sounds here you just advise, but do you ever say like kind of an audit sort of a thing? Like, here are some things that we suggest you do to address this? Do you ever do that? Or you're making the comments here and it's up to people like me to, inject myself into it and ask Mark Ells some questions?
What we do is we review and then we write a report. And sometimes in our report, we have recommendations to the town manager and town council for you to look at and do with as you please.
Okay, so in this case, you don't have any recommendations, but you're kind of making comment, but no recommendations per se.
Yes, yes.
So you don't see any particular issues, but if we wanted to address it, we could. You as a body don't see any issues with DPW right now.
We review what we are given.
Okay,
If the town council or town manager would like us to look at particular issues with relation to any particular department or any particular issue, you can certainly ask us to do that.
oh, have you done that? And again, I'm new.
Yes,
Have
we
you
have
done that,
we have
Lillian?
done that.
They've come to you and said, look at this particular issue. Okay,
Yes, we have been asked to look at CWMP. We've been asked to look at fiscal policy, and we have responded accordingly. So if you or any other members of the council would like us to do that, you can.
okay. No, that's nice to understand the process. As I say, my
Yeah,
first
that
stop,
is how it's done, yeah.
yeah, I'm going to talk to Mark Ells, having talked to Dan Santos about a few things. Thank you.
Thank you. Good report on the DPW.
Absolutely.
Okay,
All right, this is just the little ode to CWMP.
that's good too.
I think that, the sewer enterprise fund shows up there again.
Yeah. On line 1, it would be water, yeah, okay.
I will make that change.
Okay,
Now, just, I guess clarification. CWMP actually got divided into 2 pieces, I believe, right? One was the people go into the water pollution control enterprise operation, which is in the enterprise fund area, or do they go into DPW?
well, last year, fiscal 23, the operating budget for CWMP was started. This year would be the second year, and it has now been incorporated. That operating budget for CWMP has been incorporated into the Water Pollution Control Enterprise Fund.
Yeah, think of it this way. The CWMP is a project within our sewer enterprise fund.
That's right.
And so last year, its initial operating budget year, we voted on that, appropriated it separately and apart from the sewer enterprise fund appropriation and budget. So this year, now that we've established this CWMP team of personnel that are dedicated to this specific capital program within the sewer enterprise fund, we folded it into the sewer enterprise fund operating budget, because that's really all it is. It's a major capital project for our sewer enterprise fund.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just changing how we're accounting for the CWMP, both the operating component and the capital component.
But Mark, can I ask a question? It's not fully funded by user fees, is it? I mean,
No,
you're
it's not.
putting money into it.
That's right. That's why you'll see within the sewer enterprise fund, a major funding source from non-user rates coming into that operation to
Right.
fund all the costs associated with the CWMP.
Isn't that kind of different than most enterprise
Oh,
funds?
yeah. This is a capital program within this enterprise fund that receives significant funding sources outside of user rates.
And it will for the foreseeable future, correct? That'll continue to be, okay, thank
Yes,
you.
absolutely.
And,
Yep.
and where will the debt service on the capital show up?
It'll show up in the sewer enterprise fund.
And so therefore it can be covered by user fees.
It could be, but we have funding sources outside of the user fee structure that are paying for the debt service associated with that CWMP.
Yes, I noticed that. So there are directed funds and there are general funds or undirected funds. And we're getting more and more into the directed funds that you need to segment as time goes on. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's becoming more, right, we have directed funds and now some general funds. So
Yeah.
yes, this enterprise fund will now technically receive a general fund subsidy, right? Because we're dedicating new
Right.
property tax growth to the CWMP.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have a proposal in the operating budget for 24 to add another $2 million to the capital trust fund,
Yeah.
and then ultimately directing that to debt service for the CWMP with subject to town council approval.
Yeah. It's complicated.
It certainly is. And this is something the finance department deals with every year, increased complications. And we're not complaining. It just makes our job more fun and challenging.
There you go.
Uh,
It's
All
just
right,
like,
so on to the police, I guess, unless
Yep.
there's other comments.
Now that also is really clear.
Yeah, I mean, the introduction didn't change. I did put the numbers in a table as was suggested at the last meeting. Which, from a formatting standpoint, I mean, that table, I would say we want all on the same page rather than one line on the next page, to me, but once things are finalized. And then I kept the, bullet points for each individual section. I did clarify, I know Chuck had highlighted the ARPA part in bullet point number 1 there. I clarified that was shifted to the operating budget from an ARPA grant. There were positions that were created that became unfunded after that grant. So those were shifted to the operating budget to pay those positions. So all of that's pretty much the same as when we had talked last time. I added after those sections, after we had discussed with Chief Sonnabend about their challenges. And again, staffing is the biggest challenge that they're facing. Again, because of a lack of qualified personnel applying. I did put in there about the civil service requirement, complicating that as well. I mean, I'm sure you all read it. If you have any questions about what I wrote about, certainly raise them now. And I wanted to highlight the school resource officer program. I know we had, CFAC had highlighted the CSO program in the last few reports, so I thought a change might be nice to highlight a different program and how they engage with the community.
I thought this as well as the DPW were well done.
No,
from
it's
the briefing.
really clear. On point number 3, wherever that is, on page 16. Okay. Beginning on line 2, it says, while a significant increase over the approved budget, it doesn't have a subject. So it really means while it is a significant increase, comma, CFAC notice. Otherwise it doesn't make any sense.
It's a significant increase over the approved budget from the previous fiscal year.
What I'm saying it is, while it is a significant increase over the approved budget of fiscal 23, comma, CFAC notes,
Okay,
Right?
because otherwise it's not a sentence. That's it.
All right.
Well done.
Yeah, this is a
thank
good.
you.
Yep.
Try to be to the point.
Well, it was, and it's very clear and well done.
All right.
Okay, enterprise funds. I will adjust any of the budget items based on what we got today and readjust them, both the items and the totals.
This
On-
was
on
this was one of those ones, Lillian, where I wondered, Mark's on the table. If you just go down a hair, Mark, just go down a couple more lines. If that table underneath should somehow, I only put it in yellow just to say that the table above had the top and the bottom lines highlighted in maroon, and this one didn't.
Right, and I didn't know how to do that.
Okay, me
So I'll
neither.
let you make them the same.
All right,
Yeah, I
I'll do
didn't know
that.
how to do that.
okay.
Okay, on the Airport Enterprise Fund, the one-handed wonder did it again. On the third line, it should be 105,188. It's
Good.
not 105 million.
Well, Lillian, I'm not, I'm a butter knife in a world of steak knives, but that one seemed off to me, so,
Yeah, it's
good.
only 105,000.
Okay,
Okay.
fixed,
So you can take away the zeros.
got it?
Yeah. Are there any comments on any of these funds?
Let me just look, make sure. Nope, I was looking,
Okay,
nope, I think it's nicely done. I mean, you're a pro at this, Lillian, but it's nice. I made a couple little typo changes, but that's all.
well,
I think what I took away from this, Lillian, was good news that isn't shown here, which is the enterprise operations increased or have a projected increase in revenue of $3 million and a decrease in expenses of $1.2 million.
right,
They've gone from essentially being a money loser in fiscal year 2023 to being a giant profit generator in fiscal year 2024.
yes.
Is that something I mean, I
Well-
think that's really good news.
Well, it's wonderful news, but I did not mention that because all of the enterprise funds are separate. In other words, the airport is separate from golf, et cetera, et cetera. But if you think that we should say that the 9 enterprise funds went from loser to winner, we can do that.
Well, I would just point out that really what contributed to that is the significant decrease in the airport enterprise fund. And it's all associated with jet fuel purchases. They significantly reduced their budget for jet fuel purchases in FY24. And they had come forward with a significant or a supplemental budget request in FY23 due to the significant increase in prices that they were paying to acquire the jet fuel. Those costs have gone down recently, which allows them to get away with a smaller budget for FY24 But because it's so volatile, they could be coming back in FY '24 with a supplemental again. I
Yeah.
think 5 out of the last 6 years, they've come back for supplementals for jet fuel purchases. But it's a money maker for them because whatever they buy it for, they mark it up and sell it at a higher price and it makes money.
Are they still using part of that $18 million for operating?
No, that has been fully expended at this point. However, they just did get another round of funding of 1.1 million from ARPA funds. That'll help pay for jet fuel again. And so they're probably going to be over budgeted on jet fuel as a result of this grant that they just received. And I just got this information Friday. And so they're going to be in good financial condition for quite some time to come, because in addition to the operating grants they're receiving, they're also seeing increases in the funding that they're getting for capital improvements out there through the FAA and through Mass Department of Transportation Aeronautics Division. So yeah, the airport's in what was once a dire financial situation, the healthiest of all enterprise funds now.
But the FAA money is only going to go for capital?
Yeah, if we participate in the airport improvement program, and which is funded by the FAA, and which in turns, as part of that program, we are entitled to airport improvement program funds based on our enplanements, and that's just over $1 million a year. But there's a lot of discretionary FAA money available currently, and the airport has been receiving millions of dollars in discretionary funding on top of their entitlement funds for capital improvements recently.
So can they use this discretionary money for operating?
This particular grant that they just that I was just notified of, yes, it's targeted for any operating expense that they incur, and so they're going to use it for jet fuel.
And that's $1 million?
Just over 1.1 million.
Thank you.
Mark, is this an area where the town manager or the town council needs any more details than is being provided here, or is this fine, do you think?
I think it's up to them. I mean, certainly the town manager is well aware of the airport operations on a day-to-day basis, as you know, Katie serves as part of our senior management team. But the town council and they don't have direct oversight of the airport operations because we have an appointed airport commission, which the council appoint. But certainly that if there were more information that they would like to have, they can certainly ask the town manager or airport manager, Katie Service, to provide that at any time. They're happy to do so. But in your report here, I don't think you need to provide any more than what you have traditionally.
Okay. That's good input. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or changes that you'd like to make to this? Okay, I did the fixed costs. And again, I will look at the figures that were sent today. And if there are any changes, I will put them in and change all the totals.
All right, that
It's
sounds
fairly
good.
Question, and actually I'd asked Lily on this earlier and she suggested I bring it up today. Where do the revenue numbers like taxes specifically come from?
For fixed costs?
Yeah, and the what's shown on the screen, the line item called taxes. Are there specific taxes in that, or is that an allocation to cover the costs?
Exactly, that's exactly what it ends up being, Neil. It's an allocation. Yeah, because we go through an exercise, like a cost accounting exercise,
Yeah,
where we gather all our costs for each operation, and then we assign revenues based on what area of the operation generates those revenues. And then whatever ends up being the difference, taxes are supporting essentially.
and the
And those taxes include property taxes and other and excise taxes.
yeah, it's just an allocation. There's not specifics.
Yeah,
The
that's it.
intergovernmental I could figure out a little bit of, but what are so there's the UGGA probably goes in there.
Yep, exactly. We put the UGA or other unrestricted general government aid in there.
So that's 2.5 million or so. What's
Yeah,
the other part of that tends to be what?
it tends to be reimbursements for charter school
Okay,
assessments that we receive, because charter school assessment costs are included in fixed costs.
yeah,
We apply the state reimbursements that we get, because they provide us some state aid, not much, but a sum. It's like just over $1 million, I think. I think we also have in here veterans benefit reimbursements that we receive, because veterans benefit costs are
yeah.
in this budget. I think those are the three that make up that $4 million.
So in the what are they? School choice is where the town gets money from other towns. I think it's 500,000 or whatever. Does that show up there too?
No, because what happens with school choice is that is a reimbursement that we receive through the state that
Oh,
directly goes to the school committee and can be used by the school committee at their discretion. That is a unique category of funding that's under the control of the school committee.
and the school choice, which I think is about $1 million going out.
It's part of our fixed costs.
Okay. Boy, I don't know how you keep track of all this.
Software.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Green
Software
ledger paper is
here.
wrong.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll know for next year.
Any comments or changes or suggestions on this part? Okay, thank you. Looking ahead.
So then we go to looking ahead. The only question I had from Mark was whether 1.1 billion is still, if we even want to have a number in here in the first place, and if we do, if that's as reasonable a number as any to put in there.
That 1.1 billion number is, we were just, it was for planning.
Yep.
Years ago, we were trying to put our handle on, well, geez, how much do we think this is going to cost? But you know what? This is a massive program over 30 years that has so many outside influences, so many factors associated with it. I can't give you a real number with any confidence. So I would just drop that number from the report.
Yep.
We're trying to focus on 5-year increments to provide us some realistic planning purposes and 5-year timeframes. That number was, we probably never should have put that number out there to begin with, because I think it was people grabbed onto that and used it in a lot of different contexts. And
Yeah, it's all over the place.
yeah,
I think it's 1.5 billion that shows up many places.
yeah, I mean, people are just making it up, and what we did is we just based what we did, what DPW did at the beginning of this whole planning process was said, okay, here's the estimated number of miles of pipe that we have to lay, and here's the cost of what we think a mile of pipe is going to cost us, and this is over a 30-year period, and here's the cost of the roads that we're going to have to resurface after we lay the pipe, and they came up with X number of dollars per mile and just extrapolated that out. And it came out to like 800 million. And then we took that number. We said, well, we got to finance this with debt issuances. So what's the interest cost associated with it? And that added on top of that. And then we had a project management. We had to come up trying to figure out what the operating budget, how many staff are we going to have to hire to manage the implementation of this? What's that gonna cost us over 30 years? So, you know, we got up to this $1 billion number, but you know what? It was a rough estimate. It's a 30-year program that you can't project with any certainty because of all the different factors associated with it. So I would hesitate to use any number over a 30-year period and just focus on 5-year increments, which is what we're doing now.
Okay,
So what should we do in that first paragraph? Should we say that it is the biggest expenditure? It will take that will span a course of 30
You
years.
can reference the estimated 5-year project costs
Yeah.
over the next 5 years, for example, 293.5 million. If you wanted to do that, because
Yeah.
that's in the capital plan.
Yeah. Lillian, and but by my accounting, it's not the biggest cost. The schools and education are. They're running $120 million a year, every year, and going up.
Now, this would be the biggest capital project.
This is a capital project. I
Which,
think we should say it's the biggest capital project in the history of the town,
that's
Okay.
fair.
and will take 30 years to complete. And then, Chuck, maybe we could talk about the 5-year because the economic cycles, it is impossible to predict what the cost will be. The town has decided to work in 5-year increments or something to that effect.
yep. I will take a shot at that.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's much clearer by saying that.
I will-
And then you can mention whatever this new 5-year plan cost will be. Because we do know that,
I will,
or we projected it anyway.
I'm just making notes, but I will clean it up and before I send this to Mark.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, we get rid of the $1 billion.
Yep.
Okay,
I will fix all that.
I think we can get rid of the whiff. I think whiff is gone.
All right. Happy to shorten this report, Lillian. Even modestly.
Yeah, we had suggested whiff, but it's not feasible.
Okay,
It's still a viable option, but the problem is it wouldn't solve the fundings. It wouldn't provide enough funding to solve the problem that we have.
Well, maybe we should mention that. It's not realistic.
No. Be going to the voters for a solution.
And it would need an override as well.
Well, yes, eventually. Yeah.
Yeah. So will you
Okay.
want to rework that, Chuck?
I will do my darndest. Yep.
Okay. Staffing looks good. Inflation looks good. I see there's a new water, thank you.
There is no thank you, Lily. I like your wording a lot better than mine.
Well, the only reason I started dabbling with it is because the first sentence was convoluted and too long. So once I start doing that, anyway, I'm glad you like it.
I like it.
Thank you. That's it.
And I just want to make sure at the end that I asked Neil that I got the kudos correct here at the end.
Looks correct to me. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay,
those
good.
are who they are.
good.
So what would you like us to do, Chuck? To revise all of our sections based on the new numbers we got today? And
Yeah,
get-
anything you can get to me. I guess Mark gave us a little more breathing room today, if I read his email correctly. So yes, if you'll do that, I will then go through both my sections and the overall report. And once it's kind of, I think, reflects everything we've said today and updated as much as we can update it, I'll shoot it to Mark, and he can then give it the 50,000 foot, do we have these numbers right, review.
When would you like us to get this to you so that you can get it to Mark so that it can be distributed for our meeting?
I would say 8:30 tonight, Lillian.
Okay, you got it.
If we don't have, so if Monday's purpose, oops, there's a human being. If Monday's purpose is not going to be to review this, then I would say, take the week. If I can get things by Friday, that would be awesome. That way I can still get it done and to Mark before Monday's meeting. I'll leave it at that. That would be awesome if we can do that. I don't know what people's calendars are for the rest of this week.
Well, we'll do our best.
Terrific. That's all I can ask.
And thank you for coordinating all of our efforts.
Absolutely. I have the easy job, so thank you.
Mark, you recommended having the total school section reviewed by the school personnel to make sure they're okay with this and I'm not misstating anything. Any thought in terms of when we could maybe turn that around, being reasonable?
Yeah, I mean, I could provide them, based on the next version that Chuck sends me, I can cut that school part out of that and send it over to them tomorrow.
Okay.
Or as soon as, whenever Chuck has the time to send me the updated document, and ask them to review it and see if they can get back to us like within a week.
Good. Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that the numbers that you have in there are accurate with what they see them to be.
Yes, I absolutely agree, because there's a lot of new
Yeah,
numbers
it's a lot of
and
information.
analysis there.
So Mark, just so we're clear, I have an all day, unfortunately, board meeting tomorrow. So I will shoot to get you that by end of day Wednesday, if that's okay with you.
That's good. Yeah, that'd be fine.
Oops, my camera's not on. I'm hiding. There we go. I'm still here.
Yeah, I don't, just as to give the school as much time as possible, I don't see much except for will be added to one of the tables that's going to change in the school section. So I think it is pretty much, it's going to be after Chuck gets it back to you again. So.
Okay, that sounds good. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. This is good.
Betty, thank you for coming to our meeting and your comments.
No, you're welcome, Billy. And I feel fortunate to be here. I just, as I say, I'm trying to become more intelligent, and I think it's working a little bit.
Thank you.
Excellent.
So we're all.
Thanks, everybody.
Good.
Thanks, Mark.
Good night, everyone.